Good afternoon and welcome to the Daily News Analysis by Civil Service Institute, Pala. Let's look at the top stories of the day. Heavy rainfalls have caused considerable destruction in western and eastern parts of the country, especially Gujarat and West Bengal. Here you can see an image in a flooded area in West Bengal. And the other top stories are, for the first time, India breaks into top 100 in global SDG rankings. DGCA audit reveals multiple safety violations, defects at major airports. Technique to make CAR T-cells in vivo could transform cancer care. Crushed stone is being spread across farms to capture carbon. The need for gender equity in urban bureaucracy. 2 billion people don't have safe drinking water. Widely used fungicide found to be driving Candida tropicalis infections. Maritime body sounds alarm on order to retire old ships. SEBI mulls market infrastructure, institution reject to boost governance. News in detail. So here the first news. For the first time, India breaks into top 100 in global Sustainable Development Goal rankings. So India has for the first time secured a position inside 100 among the top 100 countries in the Sustainable Development Goal Index, and it has been ranked 99 out of 167 nations in the 2025 edition. And India has overall improved its ranking from 109th position in 2024. It has got a score of 67. SDG rankings are released by UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So the index measures overall progress toward achieving the 17 SDGs adopted by United Nations member states in 2015, with a score of 100 indicating full achievement of all goals. And among India's neighbors, Bhutan and Nepal ranks ahead of India, along with Maldives and Sri Lanka, while Bangladesh and Pakistan has ranked below India. India has steadily improved its standing with 112th position in 2023 to 121st position in 2022 to 120th in 2021. Globally, the SDGs has largely stalled due to various conflicts, structural vulnerabilities, and limited physical space. So the ranking has seen a continued dominance by European nations on the index, especially Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, holding the top 3 positions with 19 out of top 20 countries located in Europe. However, even these nations are facing challenges related to climate change and biodiversity due to unsustainable consumption patterns. So here you have a practice question. Who publishes the Sustainable Development Report? So the answer is UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Moving on to the next news. Here, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has conducted an audit and it has revealed multiple safety violations, defects at major airports in the country. This has been carried out in wake of the Air India plane crash. Without disclosing names of the airlines and airports and other entities, the report has talked about the various defects, especially in the critical areas such as flight operations, airworthiness, ramp safety, air traffic control, communication, navigation and surveillance systems, and pre-flight medication evaluations. From faded central line marking of a runway at an airport to known update of obstruction limitation data for 3 years to a scheduled carrier's domestic flight being held up over worn tires, the watchdog came across multiple defects in the aviation ecosystem. Even the software was not updated to the latest version. So the DGCA said it had initiated a focused assessment to strengthen safety measures across the aviation ecosystem, including aircraft indicating ineffective monitoring and inadequate rectification. All these problems have to be rectified by the major airports in the country. Now, this is from the science portion of the Hindu. technique to make CAR T cells in vivo could transform cancer care. So in recent years, chimeric antigen receptor, that is the CAR T cell therapy, has changed outcomes for patients with aggressive blood cancers and even severe autoimmune diseases like lupus. So let's see what CAR T cell therapy is. So it was developed in the early 1990s, and the central idea behind CAR T cell therapy is to retrain the body's own immune cells to recognize and destroy raw targets. So ഈ തെറാപ്പിയിൽ നമ്മുടെ ശരീരത്തിൽ നിന്ന് തന്നെയുള്ള ഇമ്മ്യൂൺ സെൽസ് നമ്മൾ എടുത്തിട്ട് ആ സെൽസ് കൊണ്ട് തന്നെ പ്രശ്നക്കാരായ സെൽസിനെ ടാർഗറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു തെറാപ്പിയാണ് CAR T cell therapy. And T lymphocytes, as you all know, patrols the white blood cells, and they often fail to identify cancer cells. So when scientists extract a patient's T cells and insert genetic instruction ആണ് നമ്മുടെ chimeric antigen receptor with a synthetic molecule, that is the chimeric antigen receptor, it gives T cells the ability to detect a specific target. So once these reprogrammed T cells are infused back into the body, they can expand, circulate, detect, and eliminate the raw targets, the deceased targets. The process is targeted and potent, പക്ഷേ അതിൻ്റെ expansion വളരെ slow ആണ്, expensive ആണ്, complex ആണ്. For example, CAR T cell therapy in India will typically cost around 60 to 70 lakh. അത് മാത്രമല്ല, CAR T cells നമ്മൾ ലാബിലാണ് എഞ്ചിനീയർ ചെയ്യുന്നത്, and cells have to be harvested and lab-based genetic engineering has to be used. അതിന് പുറമെ viral vectors അതുപോലെ chemotherapy to prepare the body to receive the modified cells has also to be used and done to the patients. പക്ഷേ in a recent discovery, instead of extracting T cells and engineering them in a lab, the researchers delivered messenger RNA directly into circulating immune cells using tiny fat-based molecules known as lipid nanoparticles. So here lipid nanoparticles becomes important. So what are lipid nanoparticles? They are messenger RNAs, and they are extracted from our own body, just like CAR T cells. And lipid nanoparticles are commonly used in mRNA vaccines, and they also help in delivering the genetic instructions to the target cells. അത് ശരിയായിട്ടുള്ള ടാർഗറ്റ് സെൽസിനെ തന്നെയാണ് അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുന്നത് എന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് റിസർച്ചേഴ്സ് ആർ ഓൾസോ ആഡിങ് എ ബയോളജിക്കൽ അഡ്രസ്. ആ ബയോളജിക്കൽ അഡ്രസ്സിന്റെ ലേബലാണ് CD8+ T cells, antibodies that bind specifically to CD8+ T cells, and the immune systems, they are the immune system's frontline killers. Since the chimeric antigen receptor instructions were delivered using mRNA rather than viruses, the changes to the immune cells were temporary, lowering the risk of permanent genetic side effects. The therapy also worked without lymphodepleting chemotherapy. So മെസ്സഞ്ചർ RNAs ഉപയോഗിച്ചതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ കീമോതെറാപ്പിയുടെ ആവശ്യം ഇവിടെ വരുന്നില്ല. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ സൈഡ് ഇഫക്ട്സ് വളരെ കുറവാണ്. ആൻഡ് ഇമ്മ്യൂൺ സെൽസിന് വരുന്ന ചേഞ്ചസും ടെമ്പററി ആണ്. പക്ഷേ ഇതിനുള്ള ഒരു സൈഡ് ഇഫക്റ്റ് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ സെക്കൻഡറി ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻസ് വരാൻ വളരെ സാധ്യത കൂടുതലാണ്. ഡ്യൂ ടു ലോ ഇമ്മ്യൂണോഗ്ലോബുലിൻ ലെവൽസ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ പ്രൊലോങ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള റിക്കറന്റ് ഹോസ്പിറ്റൽ അഡ്മിഷൻസും ഇതിന് വരാൻ ചാൻസസ് കൂടുതലാണ്. And because the entire process took place inside the body, there was no need for custom lab-based cell manufacturing. അത് അണ്ടർസ്റ്റുഡ് ആണെന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുന്നു. The researchers also introduced a newly developed component, lipid 829, a biodegradable carrier designed for improved tolerability. It showed faster clearance from the liver and lower inflammatory markers than earlier nanoparticle formulations, while still delivering the CAR instructions effectively to T cells. So the ability to bypass both complex in vitro manufacturing and chemotherapy-based lymphodepletion could make CAR T cell therapies safer and more accessible for frail, elderly, and comorbid patients. Beyond cancer, the study also explored whether the same platform could target B cells, B lymphocytes, in autoimmune settings where they mistakenly attack the body's own cells. The risk associated with conventional CAR T-cell therapy include cytokine release syndrome, neurological complications, and other long-term effects from random integration of viral vectors in the patient's genome. Moving on to the next news. Here, crushed stone is being spread across farms to capture carbon. Crushed rock is being sprinkled across large stretches of farmland globally in a novel bid to combat climate change. Climate change is a reality. So, the technique is called enhanced rock weathering and aims to speed up the natural capture and storage of carbon dioxide. Climate change ഒരു റിയാലിറ്റി ആണെന്ന് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാലോ. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ കാർബൺ സെക്വസ്ട്രേഷൻ വളരെയധികം ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻ്റ് ആണ്. So in order for the carbon to be sequestered, we are using a new technique called enhanced rock weathering. I hope all of you know what weathering is. Weathering is the process by which rocks and minerals are broken down into smaller pieces by physical, chemical, and biological means. So enhanced rock weathering ന്റെ ഒരു ഗുണം എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ വെതറിംഗ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ പ്രോസസ്സ് അത് കൂടുതൽ ഫാസ്റ്റർ ആക്കും. So enhanced rock weathering speeds the process by using quick weathering rocks like basalt that have ground finely increase their surface area. So carbon sequestration rate depends on variables including rock type and size, how wet and hot the climate is, soil type, and land management. എത്ര കാർബൺ ക്യാപ്ചർ ആകുന്നുണ്ട് എന്ന കാര്യത്തിൽ scientists they are in a dilemma whether it's some say it is more, some say it is less. So we haven't reached a conclusion yet, but the most popular technique measures cations, positively charged ions that are released from the rock during weathering, but those cations are produced regardless of which acid the rock has reacted with. So whatever measurement of the carbon capture may be, this enhanced rock weathering is a broadly considered safe since it merely speeds up an existing natural process. So ഇത് വളരെ നല്ലതാണ്. കാർബൺ ക്യാപ്ചറിനും കാർബൺ സെക്വസ്ട്രേഷനും കൂട്ടാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഈ മെത്തേഡ് വളരെ നല്ലതാണ്. പക്ഷേ ഇതിനൊരു സൈഡ് എഫക്റ്റ് ഉണ്ട്. Quick weathering rocks have high levels of potentially poisonous heavy metals. So scattering finely ground rock can cause potential leakage of heavy metals into groundwater or environment, and it can also require appropriate protective gear for those involved. So let's wait and watch how this will help in mitigating climate change. So climate mitigation idoru nalla practice aanu. Spreading crushed stone in the farmland. So this is from today's Hindu editorial, the need for gender equity in bureaucracy. So as you all know, the 73rd and 74th amendments, very popular amendments, mandate 33% reservation for women in Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local governments, and it was further increased to 50%, and today almost 17 states and a union territory, the strength of women in Panchayati Raj and urban local government is more than 50%. And today women comprise over 46% of local elected representatives, and there is also a rising presence of mayors, women mayors and councillors. Panchayati Rajilum, local self-governmentsilum, urban local governmentsilum, സ്ത്രീ പ്രാതിനിധ്യം വളരെ കൂടുതലാണെങ്കിലും ഗ്രാസ്റൂട്ട് പൊളിറ്റിക്സിൽ അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേറ്റീവ് കേഡേഴ്സിൽ സ്ത്രീകളുടെ സാന്നിധ്യം വളരെ കുറവാണ്. They exhibit a stark contrast, an imbalance. Despite more women entering the civil services, the urban administrative architecture remains male-dominated, especially in urban planning, municipal engineering, and transport authorities, and also policing. So gender-sensitive design varanamengil gender-diverse institutions ആയിരിക്കണം, gender-inclusive institutions ആയിരിക്കണം. കാരണം സ്ത്രീകളാണ് പബ്ലിക് ട്രാൻസ്പോർട്ട് യൂട്ടിലിറ്റീസ്, പബ്ലിക് ഇൻഫ്രാസ്ട്രക്ചർ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത് സ്ത്രീകളാണ്. സോ ഈ പബ്ലിക് ഇൻഫ്രാസ്ട്രക്ചറിൽ മാറ്റങ്ങൾ വരുത്തണമെങ്കിൽ സ്ത്രീ പ്രാതിനിധ്യം വളരെയധികം കൂടണം. അതിന് ഏറ്റവും നല്ല മാർഗമാണ് ജെൻഡർ റെസ്പോൺസീവ് ബഡ്ജറ്റിംഗ്. സോ വാട്ട് ഈസ് ദിസ് ജെൻഡർ റെസ്പോൺസീവ് ബഡ്ജറ്റിംഗ്? It integrates gender consideration into public finance and it's a promising but underutilized tool in India's urban governments. It was introduced globally in 1990s. So India adopted a gender budget statement in 2005-2006, and states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala leads in this effort. Especially Tamil Nadu applied gender responsive budgeting across 64 departments in 2022-23. And Kerala also has embedded gender goals through its People's Plan campaign. Globally, we can see a lot of examples, best practices in countries like Rwanda, Uganda, Mexico, Philippines, Brazil, etc. Especially in Rwanda. റുവാണ്ടയ്ക്ക് ഒരു പ്രത്യേകതയുണ്ട്. റുവാണ്ടയുടെ പാർലമെന്റിൽ more than 60% of the parliamentarians are women. Rwanda integrates gender responsive budgeting into national planning with oversight bodies. Uganda mandates gender equity certificates for fund approvals. Even Mexico ties gender responsive budgeting to results based budgeting. South Africa pilots participatory planning to anchor gender responsive budgeting in reality. So inclusive ആയിട്ടുള്ള cities നമുക്ക് build ചെയ്യണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ we require women's participation beyond political quotas. So globally, countries like Rwanda, Brazil, and South Korea show the impact of representation. Rwanda has boosted maternal health and education spending. Similarly, Brazil has prioritized sanitation and primary health care. South Korea, they had gender impact assessments and it has reshaped transit and public spaces. So coming to India, India is a country which aspires to become a $5 trillion economy, $5 trillion economy, and India's both rural and urban landscapes have to be economic growth engines. And for that, gender inclusivity and gender participation must be needed. Gender must be mainstreamed into planning and implementation through mandatory audits, participatory budgeting, and linked evaluation. അതിന് ഏറ്റവും നല്ല എക്സാമ്പിൾ ആണ് കേരളത്തിന്റെ കുടുംബശ്രീ model. Kudumbashree offer templates especially for small and transitioning cities. So I hope this article will be helpful in writing good answers in GS1, GS2, GS3, and even in GS4. You can quote this editorial as a case study. Moving on to the next news. Here, 2 billion people don't have safe drinking water. So almost 6 billion people in the world are provided with safe drinking water in their homes. But coming to the other 2 billion people, they are without safe drinking water. So what is the criteria for someone to have safe drinking water? The water source needs to meet 3 criteria. The first one is it needs to be free from contamination. And the second is it should be located at home. And the third one is that it should be available whenever needed. So around 3/4 of the 2 billion people do have access to piped water source or protected well that is probably safe to drink. But it is either not located in their home or is not always available, or there is no guarantee that it is completely contamination free. So safe drinking water എന്നുള്ളൊരു കോൺസെപ്റ്റ് മെയിൻ ഇൻഡിക്കേറ്റർ ഓഫ് പ്രോഗ്രസ് ആയിട്ട് വന്നത് തന്നെ 2017 So countries, especially in the lower income countries, fewer people have safe access to clean water. And in some of the worst scenarios, more than 5% of all the deaths are attributed to unsafe water. So unsafe water leads to more than 8 lakh deaths every year. This is because it can lead to spread of diarrheal diseases such as cholera or dysentery or other communicable diseases like polio and hepatitis. And it can also lead to malnutrition, which is attributed to half of all childhood deaths. So this is all about this article. Moving on to the next news. Widely used fungicide found to be driving Candida tropicalis infection. So let's see what Candida tropicalis is. So it is actually a yeast, a type of fungus that can be found in the environment and on the human body, particularly in the gastrointestinal tract and on mucous membranes. It's an opportunistic pathogen, meaning it can cause infections when the body's defenses are weakened. It's a common cause of candidemia, especially in patients with neutropenia. So, what is neutropenia? It's this low white blood cell count and other underlying conditions. So, antimicrobial resistance എന്ന് നമ്മൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. It's an important topic for both prelims and mains. ഇവിടെ നമ്മൾ antifungal resistance ആണ് കാണാൻ പോകുന്നത്. Candida tropicalis is an important fungal pathogen in India and many parts of the world. Its infections are associated with a mortality rate of 55 to 60%, and antifungal drugs called azoles, such as fluconazole and voriconazole, are used to treat this infection. But there is a growing concern in medical circles that clinics are seeing an increasing number of infections by strains of Candida tropicalis that exhibit high resistance to these drugs. So, what is driving this alarming increase in drug resistance? So, scientists have found out that an azole-related fungicide called 𝗗𝗶𝗃𝗀, widely used by farmers and gardeners, are accumulating and persisting in the environment, has driven the increase in azole-resistant Candida tropicalis infections. So the team also found out that 𝗗𝗶𝗃𝗀 resistant strains exhibited aneuploidy. Aneuploidy means their chromosome number short differences from the normal chromosome count for the organism. So human beings are diploid. They get a set of 23 chromosomes from father and other set of 23 chromosomes from mother. So such deviation from the normal chromosome complement is known as ploidy-plasticity. So I hope this news is clear. Maritime body sounds alarm on order to retire old ships. So over 700 Indian flagged vessels, mostly operating in coastal and near-shore routes, are expected to be retired prematurely on age-based restrictions being imposed by the DG Shipping, said International Maritime Federation. So this could render over 20,000 seafarers jobless and impact the livelihood of more than 1 lakh people. So retiring almost 700 vessels can cause existential threats to India's maritime ecosystem. So even though these 700 vessels are over 20 to 25 years, they have operated safely for over a longer period of time and often demonstrate better safety records than newer ships. This is attributed to rigorous maintenance practices and survivorship bias. Older ships that are still operational tend to be more robust and better maintained. So, ഈ 700 വെസലുകൾ retire ചെയ്തില്ലെങ്കിൽ they are going to impose penalty. So let's wait and watch how this might affect India's logistics. This can cause hurdles in the Indian maritime logistical infrastructure. Now coming to the last news of the day, here Securities and Exchange Board of India has taken steps to strengthen infrastructure institution in a region to boost governance. So market infrastructure institutions, especially in the backdrop of expanding scope of the securities market and the adverse effects like slippages in governance in these institutions could have on the broader economy, SEBI has brought in some rejigs like stock exchanges or clearing corporations, appointing 2 executive directors, reporting to the managing director, etc. SEBI has already proposed 3 broad verticals in market infrastructure institutions. The first one is critical operations. The second is regulatory compliance, risk management, and investor grievances. And the last one is commercial interest and business development. So SEBI has proposed 2 executive directors that will head the first 2 verticals, and the appointment of an ED for the third vertical has been left to the discretion of the market infrastructure institutions. The proposals will be open for public consultations till July 15. So this is all about today's news analysis. I hope it was helpful. Thank you. Have a nice day.